Hello everyone, it's Emma and welcome back to my channel. Today I'd like to talk about zero waste things that you can do at school, ways to make your school more zero waste. So clearly school has been in session for quite a few weeks now, so sorry I didn't get to this earlier, but of course there's no time like the present. You can make these changes anytime throughout the year. It doesn't have to be like a back to school thing. And I know a lot of zero wasters focus on this time of year, like zero waste school supplies, zero waste book bags, zero waste back to school clothes, whatever. And that's great and all, but what about after that? What about making your entire school more eco-friendly? So that's what I'm trying to do with this video. I was inspired to make this video by my mom, who's been a teacher for several years now, and she and her students have actually started a recycling program at their school, and she has been implementing more low-waste activities into the classroom and educating people throughout the rest of the school as well. So that's why I wanted to make this video. I just wanted to have a big list of my ideas compiled into one source so you can use this as a bit of a guide to help your school become a little bit more eco-friendly, as well as I will have some great resources linked down below, some free guides that other people have published, some free resources, free books that you can read to help live a more eco-friendly life in and out of school. So this video is going to be a way for teachers, students, caregivers, as well as administrators to make their schools, make their practices more eco-friendly. I really hope that you take some of these ideas and run with them to make your school more eco-friendly overall. So I have these broken out into category. The first category we're going to be talking about is students, and then we'll talk about teachers, and then we'll talk about caregivers. It'll be teachers/administrators. I have these broken up because obviously they make the most sense. It's easier for an administrator to add solar panels than it is a student, but it's easier for a student to start a petition, start a recycling program than it might be for an administrator, because that's something that is a little bit too tedious for an administrator to do. So I hope this all makes sense. This is for all ages, anyone from preschool, elementary school, all the way up to college. Any sort of campus, any sort of school can implement a lot of these tips. So before we jump right in, I just want to let you know that I can talk a little bit fast. So if that's a problem for you, the blog post that goes right along with this video will be linked down below. If you'd rather read along, use that as a written out guide. Or you can actually change the video. There's a little gear icon right here where you can change the speed of this video to something that best suits you. With all that in mind, let's go ahead and jump right into this list of 40 things that you can do to reduce your waste at school. Like I said, we're going to be starting with students. The first thing is to recycle. That is one of the easiest things that you can do as a student. It takes very little time, very little effort. If your school already has recycle bins available, to my knowledge, almost every single school has at least paper recycling, because obviously schools use a lot of paper. But if your school has recycling for the other materials, I highly encourage you to take part in that as well. As a citizen of the earth, be sure to recycle properly. For example, at my mom's school, you have to recycle full sheets of paper. You can't recycle any paper that you've cut pieces off of, or if you've shredded. Just be sure that you are recycling according to your school, according to your municipality. And of course, don't recycle things like magazines, tissues, paper towels, contaminated paper, and that sort of stuff. I have a whole list of things that you cannot recycle. I will leave that video linked up here as well as down below, so you can check that out after this. Next, if your school doesn't already recycle, you can start a recycling program. I actually did this when I lived in Texas, when I was at my technical training, as well as my mom started her recycling program at a school in Ohio. And honestly, it's really not that difficult. All you have to do is get in contact with your local area recycling facility, let them know that you're going to be collecting recycling, and see if they can arrange transportation. Most likely they will be able to, but the one that I had in Texas, it was too small to come pick up recycling for us, so I had to transport it myself, which I personally didn't have a problem with. And the best part is a lot of recycling facilities will actually supply you with the bins as well, so it costs zero money, but it takes a little bit of time out of your day, but it really is very easy to set up. Next, for students, is to just use supplies you already have. If you have a half-used notebook from last school year, just save it for the next school year. If you already have a perfectly good binder, don't buy a new one, and things like that. Like I said, a lot of zero waste YouTubers, bloggers out there will recommend eco-friendly school products, which is great when you run out of what you already have. Definitely use what you already have first. Buy secondhand even, because buying secondhand is still better than buying a sustainably sourced item, because it's already been created and it doesn't take new resources for you to purchase and use. Next is to start a club, a community, a sort of zero waste program within your school. This can be anything from like an after school program where you clean up the school grounds. It could be a sort of club where you host pep rallies and assemblies to educate others about the environmental crisis or about recycling or anything like that. You can take this idea and run with it. Do whatever you see fit with your zero waste program, with your zero waste community. but I hope that this at least gets you and other like-minded people to brainstorm and to help make your school even more eco-friendly. Next is to utilize or create a sort of food take-back program within your school's cafeteria. I know a few schools already have this. I'm not really sure with the COVID restrictions, but if your school doesn't already have this, here's what I mean. Start an area in your school. It can be a basket, a box, just a corner, an extra table, where students can put unopened items like extra milk, extra juice, extra fruit cups, all sorts of things like that, because some schools require you to take one of each item. And say, for example, someone's forced to take milk but they're lactose intolerant. They could put that milk on the table, and then someone who wants 2 milks can have that milk for free. And it, of course, saves that perfectly good milk from going to landfill. Going along right with that, if your school doesn't make you take one of everything, don't take one of everything if you're not going to consume it. So back to the milk. If you're lactose intolerant or you're vegan, don't take a milk if your school doesn't make you take one. Same like if you just don't want a fruit cup that day, don't take one. Take what you'll eat to prevent food waste from going to landfill. Next, let's talk about a few transportation things. If your school has a school bus system, definitely take advantage of it, because this is free transportation for you, as well as it'll get more cars off of the road. If you don't have a school bus, see if you and some classmates can carpool, because of course carpooling gets more cars off the road, which saves a lot of emissions. Not to mention, both of these options will save you a lot of gas money too. And to make it completely emission-free, if you are capable and you have the means to do so, you can walk or ride your bike instead. If your school offers online worksheets, online materials, online textbooks, definitely take advantage of that over using paper textbooks. Or if your school offers secondhand, already used textbooks, definitely take advantage of that as well. I think that is a great option, especially if you don't like digital. The next idea is to host a zero waste assembly, something where you educate your classmates about recycling properly, or you educate them about composting and food waste, anything like that. Anything that inspires you. Take that idea, research it, and then educate your classmates as well. Going along with that is starting a school community garden. This can be a great way for students to learn how to garden, to learn how to cook food, as well as eat nutritiously. And of course, this can save the school money as well on buying fruits and vegetables. Plus, with this idea, it can also teach students to compost too. Another idea is to create some sort of posters, newsletters, whether online or paper. If it is on paper, use upcycled paper, or like the back of worksheets or something. Just like the assembly thing, teaching students about food waste, teaching students about recycling, advertising your new zero waste club, anything like that. Another idea along the lines of recycling is to add recycling bins to the cafeteria. I know a lot of schools have recycling bins like in the classroom, for example, but where is most of the waste produced? It's produced in the cafeteria. So having that option to recycle in the cafeteria will probably encourage more students to recycle in the first place. Plus, teaching people how to recycle properly. You can't just throw a half full bottle of Coke in the recycle bin, because that is contaminated and it cannot be recycled. The next one has to do with cafeteria as well. This might be a little bit more in the teacher administrator realm, but nonetheless, the next idea is to opt out of individual sauce packets and little sauce containers and get like big refillable, pumpable sauce. With that comes the little tiny circle containers to put like your ketchup in, but encourage your classmates, encourage students to instead just put the ketchup right on your tray or something, so you can avoid waste entirely. Another really powerful thing that you can do as a student is to create and sign petitions. This can be anything from getting pumpable sauce containers in your cafeteria, getting a recycling program, getting a community garden, any sort of thing like that. A lot of administrators, principals will see that, hey, we have 100 or 1,000 students interested, maybe we should actually do this. This tip isn't necessarily just for students, this is for everyone, and that is to just use both sides of a piece of paper. Literally that simple. Don't just take notes on the front piece and then put it in the recycle bin. Yes, it's great to recycle, but it's great to use the entire product first before it's recycled. Better yet though, is to just use Google Docs or something similar. That way all of your notes are online, you have access to them at school and at home, and it comes with zero physical waste as well. The last one for students is about senior pranks. I'm not gonna tell you to not do senior pranks because it's a lot of fun. What I hope that you keep in mind is don't go harming the environment just to have a little bit of fun. For example, one year when I was in school, the seniors blocked off the entire parking lot with their cars and had a big barbecue, and it was really funny. But it was also pretty much zero waste. Though another year, the students saran wrapped everything, put balloons and streamers and confetti everywhere, and it was a very large amount of physical waste, and it made me very sad. Even before I was like really involved in the zero waste movement, I'm not gonna ruin anybody's fun, but have fun responsibly. Next, let's move on to the teachers category. The first tip for teachers is to just save school supplies from past students and save them for future students. So at the end of the year, collect any scrap paper, any old binders, markers, highlighters, whatever it may be, and save them for next year's students. Then at the beginning of the next year, you can pass those out And then you can ask your students to just purchase what's left instead of asking them to buy an entire list of items. This saves a bunch of waste, it'll save people a lot of money. Next is to do a classroom trash audit. So I did a trash audit in February, and basically what it is, you collect all of your non-food waste for an entire week or an entire month, whichever you choose to do. And then you look at it and you're able to look at, okay, what can I reduce? What can I replace with a different material? What can I cut out completely? And things like that. Next, for teachers, when you are choosing your next field trip, if you have the power to do that, choose something more related to the environment. You can take a trip to your local recycling facility, a local composting facility. This is a great education opportunity for students to learn more about those processes. Or it could even be something like going to a nature preserve and talking about why preserving nature is so important. There's a whole lot of options when it comes to a more eco-friendly field trip. Now, I have a few ideas for specific subject teachers. So for science teachers, there's obviously a lot of potential for you to incorporate climate-related studies into your classrooms. I'm not gonna go into a bunch of details, but talking about the importance of saving water, saving electricity, climate change even, all that sort of stuff is very important and easy to incorporate into science class. Art teachers, of course, some great opportunity there for you is to have DIY upcycled projects. You can ask students to make something out of old cans, old popsicle sticks, plasticware, whatever it may be. There's so many options when it comes to upcycled artwork, so I encourage you to take advantage of that. History teachers, of course, you can talk about the history of Earth Day, important people in the environmentalist movement, and then of course, teachers who don't teach a specific subject like elementary teachers, you can incorporate these things as well. Not to mention, you can do things like create your own paper, create your own dye out of food waste. I have videos on those subjects. They'll be linked down below if you're interested. And other sorts of zero waste education. Something that teachers and other faculty can do too is to encourage students to bring their own utensils to use in the cafeteria, because a lot of cafeterias already use reusable trays, but most of the silverware that they pass out is single-use plasticware that students have to use every single day. I don't even want to think if there's like, say 500 students times 5 days a week, 2,500 pair of utensils every week, and that's just one school. Okay, I should not have done that. Basically, all I'm saying is encourage your students to bring their own utensils to avoid all of that waste. Like I mentioned earlier in the cafeteria with collecting unused fruit cups and things like that, also have a bin to collect unused plasticware to be reused the next day. Another great thing that teachers can do is to pair with TerraCycle. I talked about TerraCycle in my surprising things that you can recycle video, but TerraCycle is basically this company where you can recycle all sorts of odds and ends like glue sticks, markers, juice pouches, and things like that. And it is very easy to get a box from them, and then once that box is full of, say, markers, you tape it up, you put some packaging information on there, and then you ship it off to TerraCycle to be recycled. Another fun thing for teachers to do would be to encourage a plastic-free day. It could be the first day of the month, it could be every Friday, something like that, but just encourage students to use as little plastic as possible, incorporate plastic-free activities, and of course be sure to educate your students as to why plastic isn't the greatest material. Okay, teachers, please avoid laminating. I know it looks really nice. It really does. Just stop and think for a minute how wasteful it is. Not only is it plastic, but now that piece of paper can't even be recycled. That just turns perfectly good material into stuff that has to go to the landfill. I mean, there are definitely times where lamination is necessary, but don't over laminate. Think before you laminate. I already talked about this a bit earlier, but quit requesting new items for your classroom and for your students. Encourage students to use what they already have, as well as don't ask students to buy a bunch of new tissues and new Ziploc bags and new Clorox wipes. Of course, some of those things are necessary, but encourage students to only use items when they need it, use less, and then try to find alternatives as well. In the age of digital technology, I encourage you to send out newsletters via email or something like that, instead of passing out flyers and passing out notifications, I guess. What do you call them? Like a slip, like, hey kids, give this permission slip to your parents. Just email it to the parents maybe? I haven't been in school in a while, so I don't really know if it's already to that point. But if it's not, teachers, I encourage you to take advantage of email, Slack, other sorts of notification systems out there. Especially in this age of technology, we can save so much paper by doing that. If your classroom or your hallway or whatever has a lot of windows, I encourage you to use natural lighting as much as possible. And then, of course, remind your students to turn off the lights when they leave a room too. Next is to save decorations from one year and use them the next year. This can go for holiday decorations, regular classroom decorations, whatever it may be. Of course, you're gonna need to replace them at some point, but please don't buy new decorations every single year. Next is to teach students about the importance of donating. Maybe at the end of the year, go through your classroom's items and ask your students what books they didn't like, what toys they didn't like. Create a big donate pile that you and your students can take to a local thrift store. And then when it's time to buy new supplies, teach your students about the importance of secondhand shopping. Band teachers, I have one for you too. Don't forget about the band. Encourage students who graduate or quit band to donate their items to the band room. And I know some parents are gonna be like, I paid hundreds of dollars for this instrument. I am not just donating it, which is fine. If that's the case, at least sell your instrument. If you're willing, if your students are willing, encourage them to donate old practice books, music stands, instruments, whatever it may be, to the band room so that someone can use it for free the next year. Instead of hosting a wasteful barbecue or a wasteful water balloon fight, because I know a lot of schools do fun activities in the springtime, instead, try to find a more zero waste friendly alternative. So for example, what my high school did in the summer is we would host what we call Serve Arcanum. This was just a really big day-wide high school wide event where we would get out of school for the entire day and go do a community service project. A lot of these projects would be like waxing the fire trucks, reading to preschoolers, lawn work for elderly people, and so forth. And it doesn't have to be that. You can think of your own idea too, but I just think that was a really fun idea. It taught us about the importance of community service as well. And of course, it was a fun day out of class. But if your school does do a field day or something, just opt for less wasteful food, less wasteful games as well. But if you do have to play these wasteful games, at least teach the students to pick up after themselves. Okay, the last category, and there's just a few left, is for caregivers. So first, encourage your students to eat a low-waste lunch by packing their lunch in a reusable bag, a reusable lunchbox, in reusable containers, and with packageless items like apples, carrots, and so forth. Of course, teach your students to only buy things when they need them and to use what they have already. I think a lot of the stigma that we have in our society about we have to buy everything new comes from our upbringing. So if you teach your children from a young age, hey, it's okay to use what you have even if you used it last year, children will start to recognize that from an early age and then carry that on to adulthood instead of having to learn it 20 years later for themselves. The next thing that you can do is to offer to carpool for your neighborhood. And then the last thing for caregivers is to make secondhand popular again. This is another thing too that has a lot to do with your upbringing. Like, you can be the parent that's like, ew, secondhand is gross, or hey, buying secondhand is cool and we can save the earth by doing so. And then kids will be like, heck yeah, let's save the earth. Let's go buy secondhand. Get your kids excited to go to Goodwill instead of going to the mall. It can be hard with kids. I understand that. And this isn't just clothes either. This can be back to school outfits, book bags, lunch boxes, all sorts of things like that. If you'd like to learn more about fast fashion and why you should shop secondhand, I'll leave a video linked up here as well as down below. And then lastly, a bonus tip, because this tip is just for everyone, and that is to be an advocate for the earth. The more people in your school that are concerned about living zero waste and living eco-friendly and making your school suit that lifestyle, the more things that will get implemented. The louder that your voices are, the more voices that there are, the more that can be done. If you're new here, you'll hear my outro quote in a bit too, but it's your small changes have a big impact in the long run. So it might seem like a small task for you to use both sides of the piece of paper and to recycle, but the more that you educate your classmates, your students to do so, the more impact that there will be, positive. The more positive impact that there will be. Say you're having a zero waste assembly is to educate your administrators and teachers and fellow students about how much money you can actually save by living low waste. It's sad, but I often use this as a tactic on my own channel as well. I talk about free ways to live low waste, how to make money by living low waste. People find it hard to make changes just for the greater good. But if you give them an incentive like saving money, they will do it. But basically, by using less electricity, using less water, growing your own food, using less products, it can save a lot of money for the school, which then that money can be used for other things like sports, the arts, and other great things like that. So never stop learning in school and about zero waste. Never stop educating people and inspiring people as well. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope that you found it useful. If you're new here, I'd really appreciate it if you hit subscribe. I talk about all sorts of things, zero waste, all across the board, but I specifically focus on easy and free ways to make zero waste accessible to everyone. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. If you would still like to see a video about zero waste, low waste, school supplies, office supplies, definitely let me know. I'd love to make that video if there's interest for it. I appreciate you watching this video and taking some time out of your day to learn a little bit more about the zero waste movement. Let me know if you think of any other tips by leaving a comment down below. That's all I have. Thank you again for watching, and until next time, remember that these small changes you make have a big impact in the long run. Bye guys. Next, let's move on to the teachers category. Next, that word is hard. First for teachers is to save supplies from past students and save them for teachers. Did any of that make sense? Just part of it? Another fun thing for teachers to do and then the last thing for caregivers is to make secondhand popular again. I'm gonna get that on a red hat. Yeah.